All right, so why don't we call the meeting to order at 12:09 on Tuesday afternoon, August 18th. Melinda Collins is our chair, and she is attempting to log into the meeting, but is having some difficulty connecting by audio. So I'm Katie Conlon, I'm the vice chair of the board, and in her temporary absence, she may be able to join us eventually. I will act as the acting chair of the meeting. Do the other members want to introduce yourselves as we did at the last meeting?
Arthur Doyle.
Mike Zulis, member of the board.
Okay, member Richard Wells is not able to join us. We're also joined by Michael Dennehy, town administrator, and Kevin Freitag, town council, and Hillary Waite of the select board office. The first item on the agenda is a discussion and approval of the Community Preservation Act ballot question. And Mr. Zulis or Mr. Freitag or Mr. Dennehy, would one of you like to take the lead on this?
I can say very quickly the town council, Kevin Freitag, circulated a draft, an updated draft of the ballot question language. This ballot question language, I think, is improved because I think it's more concise and more clear for the residents. The prior language that we discussed last week had about 402 words. This one cuts it down about 120 down to 280 words. So I think it's a marked improvement. There is one thing, I just read through it this morning, and we can ask Kevin, but in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down, when it talks about a taxpayer receiving regular property tax abatement or exemption will also receive a pro rata reduction. I think we probably want to say in the surcharge, small change, but it just might read a little better if we just say add a the before the surcharge. Kevin, I don't know if there's anything you want to add, but.
Good afternoon, Kevin Freitag, Town Council. No, Mike, I think that's fine.
Okay, any further comments, or would anyone like to make a motion?
I'd like to, well, I guess we need a motion and then discussion, so I'll move adoption.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to adopt the ballot question language as presented. Any further discussion?
Madam Vice Chair?
Yes, Mr. Doyle.
I want to compliment Kevin on the succinctness of this document as voiced by Michael. I think the clarity is extremely important, and I want to address my comment to paragraph 3 and ask whether there is any value or advantage or possibility of reversing the order of the two sources of revenue so that the voters will first see in Milton the act would be funded by annual distributions provided by a state trust fund and by an additional excise of 1% on the annual tax levy. And the reason I say that is that sometimes when people see the word tax, they will just stop and not go beyond it. And what we can do is assume for those individuals that are so inclined, the vote is going to be a no vote. Whereas if psychologically speaking, incentive-wise speaking, they first see distributions provided by a state trust fund, followed by a 1%, which is a relatively marginal surcharge, that there may be a greater opportunity for a yes vote. So my question is whether or not they can be reversed in the order in which they appear for the reasons discussed.
Again, Kevin Freitag, Town Council. Again, this is a summary of the law. It's not meant to be an advocacy piece necessarily, but I do think that simply by moving the two pieces that you just talked about, that certainly still contains an accurate summary of the Community Preservation Act. So if you think it reads better and it would be an improvement to change the order there, I'm okay with that.
Okay, Mr. Doyle, would you like to propose a change to the language?
Based upon town council's comments, I would like to propose that the order be changed as discussed or as put forward.
Okay, so just so we know what we're voting on, would it be correct then, it's the third paragraph so that it would read, in Milton, the act would be funded by annual distributions provided by a state trust fund and an additional excise of 1% on the annual tax levy on real property to be assessed beginning in fiscal year 2022, period. Is that how the first sentence
Correct.
would read under your proposed revision, Arthur?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. And Kevin, that sounded fine to you with the way I read it? It's just
Yes, and I'm
reversing this.
tracking and making all of these changes in the version. Yes.
Okay, so Mike moved to adopt the language. I guess we could treat that, if Mike's willing to accept that as a friendly amendment, or do we need to?
I think Arthur made the motion, so.
I did.
And I
Arthur made the motion. I'm sorry.
So I offer it as a friendly amendment.
All right, since you're the one making the motion, I think, trying to remember how this should work, if you're the one making the motion and offering a revised language, I guess would we either want Mike Zulus to offer the language as a friendly amendment that Arthur could accept, or can Arthur amend his own motion, Kevin?
I think that Mike, having made the motion, it could be posed as a friendly amendment to Mike's motion, and Mike could add that language.
I think it was the other way around. Arthur made the motion rather than Mike. I had that same mistake.
Then a friendly amendment to Arthur's motion would be appropriate.
And Arthur can do that? Arthur can amend his own motion?
I would think so. I mean, he can just remake the motion.
Okay. All right, so Arthur, then the motion that you're making is to approve the language with the amendment that you suggested and I read.
That is correct.
And I'll
Okay,
second.
and seconded by Mr. Zulus. Is there any further discussion? I don't know if Melinda is able to hear us. It looks like she's still muted, so I'm not sure whether she's able to participate in the vote. I guess she could probably try to participate, well, by a show of hand through the participant tab. But I'm not sure she can hear us. Hillary, do you know if Melinda can hear us?
I am not 100% sure.
Okay. Why don't we proceed as though she can't, since it's showing mute then. So if there's no further discussion, although, Mr. Zulus.
Can I just add, make sure we have added as a friendly amendment the before surcharge in paragraph 5? I think, but I'll just, since it wasn't in front of us, I'll add that, Arthur, as a friendly amendment.
And you're accepting that, Arthur?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear Mike.
Yes, so Arthur, can you hear me?
I can now, yes.
So I'm offering as a friendly amendment in the 5th paragraph before the word surcharge, I think we need a
The article, the.
Yes.
Yes, I concur. I accept that.
Okay, then it sounds like, is there any further discussion? Then if not, we're ready to move to a vote. Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay. I don't see a hand raised by Melinda, so I'm assuming that she can't hear us, and we'll go on that assumption for the rest of the meeting.
She can hear us, but she does not wish to vote by hand.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Hillary. The next item is a discussion of the warrant closing date for a special town meeting. We had a discussion about this at our last meeting, and we deferred it to today's meeting. Maybe I should go to the town administrator to see if there's any update or additional information from any departments or on the budget.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I did hear from some of the department heads. Tim Zawinski had spoken to the planning board. They don't believe that they'll have any articles ready at this time. Other department heads, like Will Adamczyk at the library Board of Trustees do not have any articles to put forward at this time. I think the conversation that we will have on Friday as a part of the Finance Subcommittee with our town treasurer, our chief appraiser, and town accountants may or may not enlighten us. We haven't received any further guidance from consensus revenue reports. The last update we received was from Senator Timilty, where he had convinced all of us that the system that was put in place, which was FY20 unrestricted government general aid, was going to be level funded to FY21, and the commitment of the governor for FY21 Chapter 70 would also be honored through October, I believe he said. We're still waiting for more guidance from the state. As you can understand, with COVID still a large part of our community and our society and our economy, that we haven't been able to receive that guidance from them at this time. So I'm not sure if we need to put budget articles back on there, but certainly something we could talk about Friday as a part of the subcommittee. I'm not sure if they'll have much relevance from an update perspective.
So I think based on that, the board has a couple of options. Either we could defer this until next week and see the outcome of the finance discussion and maybe consult with a representative of the school finance subcommittee. I think that would just, if I'm understanding the town administrator and Hillary Waite correctly, that would just kind of push out the date and shorten the period of time for the warrant committee. We could still have a December meeting. We would just be operating under a shorter time frame.
Correct.
Or the second option would be we could make a decision on this today. What is the sense of the board? Mr. Zulus.
Is there any downside to having a December meeting in the event that we may need it to rebalance the budget before the first of the year?
The only downside I see is the tax recapitulation from the Board of Assessors. That the timing of that has to take place. We saw it last year where we had to do the January town meeting. That may come into play if we want to readjust some of the budget articles.
That's actually my point. So my point was, well, since we may have to do that as we did last year, why wouldn't we just set the December date and do it? And then if we don't have to do it, that's fine, but we'll just have our meeting in December as opposed to January. And then if we have to do it, we can do it.
I think the Board of Assessors normally set their rates in December, so that's something they'd have to do in November.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can check with Chief Appraiser Bob Bushway to see the timing of it. And that was one of the questions we were going to speak to on Friday with the Finance Subcommittee is what does this do for his recapitulation?
Let me ask Town Council a follow-up to Mike Zulus's point, which is if we were to decide to schedule today or at the next meeting, a December meeting, and I think we had been talking about the date of Monday, December 7th at the last meeting. If we were to go ahead and advertise a warrant closing deadline for that, and then we decide we don't need a December meeting, we can either wait until the winter of 2021 or we can push it off until May. If a citizen's article comes in or an independent board should submit an article, are there any concerns then about just this board deciding, well, we may have received a citizen's article or we may have received a warrant article from another town board, but we don't think we need to have a special meeting? Is there any risk of that? I know that there are some rules for citizens petitions that if there's enough signatures that could force a special town meeting. You're on mute, Mr. Freitag.
Yes, thank you, Kevin Freitag, Town Council. Ms. Conlon, you are right that there are special requirements for responding to citizens' petitions. I'd have to take a look at specifically whether or not that would force you to hold that meeting or would just force that the article submitted by the citizens be placed on the next town meeting. But I can certainly get an answer for you and get that back to you at the next select board meeting.
Okay, thank you. So, Arthur, yes. Oh, and then
Madam
Mike
Vice Chair,
Dennehy.
do we have anything to lose in deferring this to our next meeting when we will have Melinda and Richard with us as well?
I think it's just the publication deadline in the Milton Times for the warrant closing, so it would push it out a little bit later.
Right. But due to the lack of volume of town meeting articles, I believe that shorter window at the end would benefit us because there aren't many articles coming forward. And just to go back and clarify, the tax recap has to take place after town meeting. So if we had a December 7th town meeting, the tax recap for the Board of Assessors would have to take place after that meeting. I had it backwards.
Yeah, and I think what we did last year was we just did it the next day, right after the special town
Correct.
meeting. So we could, it's a bit of a crunch, but it's doable. Or at least we did it last year. We could pull it off again.
Right.
What is the sense of the board? Is the desire to postpone this until next Wednesday's meeting when we have our other colleagues with us?
That sounds like it makes sense. Since we don't have, to Mike's point, since we don't have many articles, then the shorter time frame by a week for the warrant committee shouldn't cause too much, hopefully wouldn't cause too much angst.
Okay, agreeable to you, Arthur?
I'm comfortable with this, yes.
Okay, then why don't we continue item 3 of the warrant closing date for a special town meeting to the meeting on the 26th of August. The final item on the agenda today is the town green use policy. And I believe Attorney Freitag would like to give us an update on this.
Thank you, Member Conlon, Vice Chair Conlon. Again, Kevin Freitag, Town Council. I just wanted to give you a brief update on where things stood. Since our last meeting, I've had a chance to take a look at the way that towns surrounding Milton use their properties to accommodate all sorts of different types of events. Many of the communities that I looked at have similar property to the town green that Milton has, that's located obviously right in front of the town hall offices, and that where the Brian Hugo gazebo is located. So in looking at some of those other towns, I've looked at some of the policies that they have in place, some of the permits that they have in place, and I'm in the process of developing a policy that I think fits Milton's particular circumstances and specifically the property. One thing that's interesting and that I think should be considered by this board, just sort of broadly speaking, is that where that property is located really is sort of in the center of the town government for Milton. So events that are going to be held there may affect, if not restricted in sort of the time and the date in which events can be held, could seriously affect things like the operation of town hall, the fire department, perhaps Milton Police Department. Obviously, there's some ways of getting to Beth Israel Deaconess that might pass in front of town hall as well. So there are a lot of sort of public safety issues that I think that the town needs to take into account. And I'm going to sort of prepare some comments on and some thoughts along those lines for the board to take up at its next meeting. In the meantime, as you may know, the gazebo has its own permit application. And that permit application is typically submitted to the town administrator's office. And I think that it would be prudent for the board to perhaps at this meeting, for the time being until we get a firm policy in place, to just make it clear and I suppose perhaps take a vote to just reauthorize the town administrator to continue to permit the use of the town gazebo, subject to approval by the town administrator as well as the Milton Police Department, the fire department, and the director of the Board of Health. That'll, I think, give us some time to continue to accommodate some requests that we might get in to use the town gazebo, and also allow us the time to put together a more formal policy. I would also add to that there have been a couple of recent requests that have been made to use the not just the gazebo, but also some of the probably some of the town green, some of the area that's located directly in front of the town gazebo, and that it might also be prudent for the board to sort of extend and authorize the town administrator to continue to take up those requests and allow the town administrator the authority to approve or deny those requests subject to approval by the Milton Fire Department, Police Department, and the Director of the Board of Health. My understanding is that some of the churches have asked that they be allowed to use the town green. Their requests are for September. We should certainly have a policy in place before then, but just to sort of accommodate anything that comes in the meantime, it might be a good idea to give the town administrator the authority to deal with those requests, because the alternative would be that I think the select board would need to meet and take up those requests. And my concern would be a request that was perhaps more time sensitive, that was requesting something to happen within a few days of the request having been made. That seems to me to be something that you'd want the town administrator to be able to respond to. So those are my thoughts and suggestions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Doyle.
I like Karen's last comment about time sensitivity. We're approaching Labor Day, and that's a period of time when there's the possibility of a whole host of such requests coming in, and the recommendation that town council gives relative to conveying this to the town administrator, to me, would seem to be working in the interest of all of the parties involved.
Okay, other comments?
I'll make a motion to delegate to the town administrator the authority to grant permits for the town green in front of town hall, subject to the approval of the police chief, the fire chief, and the director of the board, the director of the health department, as needed. Which delegation shall terminate no later than the adoption by this board of a policy with respect to that town green.
Okay, do we have a second to the motion, Arthur?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Or Mr. Dennehy, is there anything that you wanted to add? Yes.
Yeah, so I was approached, this office was approached on Thursday and Friday of last week about a potential campaign rally being held on the town green as well. So we're seeing different things being asked of the town green that we haven't seen before. I really appreciate this board allowing the Milton Police Department, Milton Fire Department, and our health department to weigh in on this. It's an important piece. As this board knows, our headquarters and our only ladder truck exit from the rear of Town Hall. When we have concerts out here, hopefully next summer, people can understand how busy it is and the need to make sure that we have proper egress for our emergency vehicles. So there is some time sensitivity to this, so I appreciate everyone appreciating that piece of this. And in this day and age, we've been asked for more of our town green, but I suggest that there will be more inquiries into this piece of property in the coming months and years. So having a more defined policy is great. I really appreciate it.
Let me ask a follow-up question to that. If there is a political event requested for the town green and gazebo or any other event, in terms of the number of people attending, is that something that the health department, working under the governor's guidelines right now during COVID, would determine is appropriate?
Yes, yeah. So the person had reached out. I mentioned to them that the town and this board was observing, and the Board of Health was observing the governor's guidelines for both outdoor and indoor spaces, and that would apply. all that have inquired about the use of the property have been informed and did not disagree with that policy.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Dennehy or Mr. Freitag?
So just to be clear, and I tried to make it clear in the motion, I'm not sure if I just succeeded. The intention is to delegate the authority to Mr. Dennehy, subject to the consent of police chief, fire chief, and public health director, and then to have that delegation terminate on the later of, or no later than the adoption by this board of a policy. In other words, we could terminate it earlier, or once we get a policy in effect, then the delegation would terminate. Did I get that, Kevin?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, that's how I understood the motion, Mike. So,
Great.
Sometimes I talk and I don't know if at the end it was entirely clear.
no, I'm pretty sure that's what you had said, and that's what I understood the motion to be. Arthur, same view?
Exactly. That's what I
Okay.
seconded.
Okay. All right, then, is there any other discussion on the motion? If not, then all in favor, this will be a roll call vote. Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
and myself, yes. 3-0. So that is our final item on the agenda. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
and Ms. Conlon, yes. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all. We'll see you next
Nicely done.
Wednesday.
Thank you.